Hello everyone, I'm Bill Womack. I don't normally do video announcements of any sort, at least not with my face in them. Now that you see me, you probably know why. But I've been hearing a lot of speculation, a lot of rumors and gossip lately about Emma Field X. And I thought it was time to go on video, talk to you guys face to face, and set the record straight on what's happening, at least from my viewpoint. Most of you are at least somewhat familiar with this project. About 3 or 4 years ago, Francois from FS Add-on came to me and asked me to create an FSX version of the noted Emma Field scenery that was first done for FS8 and then converted for FS9 by my scenery hero and guru, Richard Goldstein. And it's great scenery. I mean, I loved it, and I know a lot of you loved it too. And our goal when we started out was just to take what was already there and update it for FSX with all the latest technology and materials and move forward. But as you probably know, since it's been 3 or 4 years and you haven't heard or seen much of anything about it, there have been a few roadblocks along the way. Roadblock number 1 came right towards the beginning of the project. I was excited to recreate it because I thought I could take this wonderful magical place that Richard had created and just turn it into an FSX native scenery, add some bells and whistles, and move on. It sounds fairly straightforward and kind of fun. So what I did was took his original buildings and converted them, a couple of them, the clubhouse and a hangar, from FS9 to FSX. All new textures, all new models, but was staying with the original look of the buildings and trying to keep it as consistent as possible, just with new tech. I showed some photos or screenshots online, and Richard saw them and got in touch with me and essentially was surprised that we were going to use his exact look and the buildings the way he designed them, and indicated some reservations about that, which is his right. I completely stand behind that decision, but the outcome of it was roadblock number 1. We were essentially tasked with creating a whole new Emma Field that didn't look like the old field. So right then and there, a lot of the diehards were not going to be happy with us. But what are you going to do? You know, Richard didn't have time to work on it, and it is absolutely his right to preserve his IP. So we decided to move forward and create an all-new field that didn't look anything like the original, but maybe kept some of that Pacific Northwest flavor. So I scrapped the original models, started building them over again to new specs, and fairly quickly thereafter, several years back, ran to roadblock number 2, or at least speed bump number 2, in that Orbix came on the scene and announced their intention to create Pacific Northwest scenery that was going to cover the Olympic Peninsula, which of course is where Emma Field sits. So that added a wrinkle in that we needed to make sure our scenery worked with their scenery. It was obvious from the Australian work they had done that it was going to be a high caliber and it was going to be popular. So I set out to try and make absolutely positive that what we created was compatible with what Orbix was doing with their FTX. So I worked on that level for a while. I got to know Orbix, actually became one of their developers and released the Stark's Twin Oaks package as my sort of test voyage into those waters. And I liked what I saw. I loved the caliber of the work, but it also became apparent fairly quickly that there were going to be some conflicts with what we were planning for Emma and what they had in mind. Namely, I had asked Holger Sandman to create the Olympic Peninsula as our sort of patch of terrain for Emma Field. We were expanding it out quite a bit from the original product, and decided to put the entire Olympic Peninsula in our product. But as you can imagine, what I realized was that people who bought FTX Pacific Northwest and bought Emma Field were going to be essentially buying the same terrain by the same developer twice. So I had to kind of go back to the drawing board and redesign what I was working on. I scrapped the idea of doing the entire Olympic Peninsula because it just didn't make sense. I mean, not only was it part of the full FTX Innate Blue package already, but it was the area that they chose to release as the free demo software. So you're going to have an awful lot of people, I figured, out there who are already running the Pacific Northwest, or at least the demo that are going to have the Olympic Peninsula. It just didn't make sense to try to create our own version, all the conflicts and all the customer support issues that came with that. So I scaled it way back, and I started after a while to think of this project as basically an Orbix FTX add-on airport. And what I mean by that is that instead of providing a whole bunch of terrain with it, I would define an area around the field and create photo terrain and do it in such a way, color balance it, and do the contrast and such so that it blended perfectly with the Orbix FTX scenery around it. Figuring that, you know, anybody who's got Emma is probably standing a pretty reasonable chance of having FTX as well. So I still wanted to make sure they played together well. So I've been working, you might have seen in my blog recently, I have been adding new buildings and building out the Emma area, and adding features and getting pretty close to a beta, pretty close to a place where I could show some screenshots. But all the while thinking, okay, this is sort of a weird hybrid. It's sort of like an Orbix airport, only it's not because it's done for FS add-on. What that meant, another roadblock, is that I don't know how many of you are familiar with the FTX way of doing things, but we essentially at Orbix have a large group of developers who all feed into a central repository of library of objects, and we'll create buildings, we'll create vegetation, we'll create all these objects for airports, put them into one mass library or a series of them, and then everyone who works on Orbix projects will share this content. It makes it a lot faster to develop high-end content. You don't have to model everything yourself. I don't have to create every light pole and every little traffic cone myself. But of course, as someone who was working for FS Add-on, that really wasn't a possibility. All the Orbix libraries that I had been developing for myself had been feeding into. I wasn't going to be allowed to make a withdrawal from to do Emma. And so the more I thought about it, the more I thought it just doesn't make sense. The way I'm approaching the project right now, it is Orbix in every respect except for that it's done for FS Add-on. And by doing that, I'm locking myself out of a whole bunch of libraries and features that I would be able to use, some even more enhanced integration if I were just working with Orbix for the final product. The snag is that, of course, Francois owns the name Emma Field. And I had said years ago that I would do this field for him, and so really there was no way that I was going to just come out and pull the project away from him and make Emma Field an Orbix product. Not only would it be a violation of his copyright, but it just wouldn't be a very nice thing to do. And it's important to maintain your friendships and your working relationships. It's a small business. So what I have decided after a lot of soul searching is that I will leave the name Emma Field, obviously, with Francois. I'm going to leave that patch of terrain where the original Emma Field lived completely alone and just set it aside, essentially turn it back over to Francois and resign from the Emma Field project, and use all these buildings and this great environment that I had created, and all the Bear Gulch buildings, if you remember that from the Real Air Scout package. Take those two fields. I'm going to move what was going to be Emma Field from me around the corner of the mountain and snug it up on the shores of Lake Cushman. And this is the basis for an Orbix FTX airport that we're calling Cushman Meadows, that I am aiming to get released fairly soon. And the package will be photo terrain, will be Cushman Meadows Airport itself, a seaplane port that goes right next to it, and then down at the far end of the lake, Bear Gulch will still be there, although a new, enhanced, basically completely rebuilt version. So for all of you people who've been asking me what's going on with the Emma Field X, as far as I am concerned, Emma Field X is no longer in my sights. What I'm doing is creating Cushman Meadows instead, same size airport with good seaplane facilities, helicopter facilities, obviously land plane facilities, and then down the lake a little bit, adding in Bear Gulch, photo terrain between the two. In fact, the entire area of Lake Cushman and quite a bit of ground around there, quite a few dozens of square kilometers, will be covered by the photo terrain. I'll show some photos here, some screenshots of the buildings that I'm working on. We're in a pretty advanced state of development right now, so I think we're going to be getting this thing into beta relatively soon, and once we do that, then we'll start peppering out the usual selection of preview screenshots. But it is around the corner. I doubt it's going to be this year. I think it's probably going to be early 2011 before it comes out. But it's underway. It is mostly built in terms of the main object modeling. Very happy with it. And I think for those of you who liked Emma Field X and who are looking forward to Emma Field, you'll enjoy this field at least as much. Who knows, maybe even more. So anyway, that's my story. And that's where the project stands right now. Hopefully you guys understand. I don't want to disappoint longtime Emma Fielders, but it was never going to be the field that you saw before anyway. And what you're going to get now is at least as good as that. I'm looking forward to presenting it. So keep your eyes peeled, and I'll be back with you soon with some more screenshots. And chin up. Thanks.